Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to the public defense of Mr. Francisco Alar's thesis entitled Performance Management of the Police in the Context of Public Sector Reform in Mozambique. A special welcome to Mr. Alar's friends and colleagues from Mozambique, and of course to Her Excellency the Ambassador from Mozambique and her staff. Most welcome here at ISS. Of course you have all switched off your telephones, but would you please check again, do me a favor? See whether it is switched off? Thank you. I declare the meeting open. I bid you, Mr. Francisco Inácio Alar, most heartily welcome. You may now give a brief explanation of your research, of your reasons for having undertaken it, and of the results it has yielded.
Thank you, Mr. Rector Magnificus. Well-learned opponents, my dear promoters, dear audience. At a young age, I dreamed of becoming a policeman or a journalist. At that time, I was influenced by imaginary heroes of novels with journalists and detectives as protagonists. When I grew up, war, injustice, and police corruption drove me to journalism and made me hate the police profession. I thereby became a passionate journalist on crime and policing. As a young journalist, I enjoyed investigating crime and police histories. But the more I studied the police, the more I understood the problems inside and around the police issues in Mozambique. After studying the Mozambique police social security for my master's degree in social policy in Zimbabwe, I am here now defending my PhD thesis on performance management of the police in the context of public sector reform in Mozambique, with focus on the country's capital seat of Maputo. I will first highlight the objectives, focus, and the limitation of the study. The central concern of this study is the institutionalization of performance management in the police of the Republic of Mozambique, PRM, in Maputo, and more broadly, to investigate how the police force manages its own performance. This was done by applying multi-angle and multi-factor framework that enabled analysis of core values and indicators of governance while taking into account contextual factors impacting on the police organization, both internally and externally. The framework is based on capacity perspective, such as Greenhill and Hildebrand, entailing basic levels of analysis, the strategic management, for example, by Nitzberg and Halachmin, in which the core debate of performance management is based and the underlying governance principles. It also looks at the theories and literature on informal practice by Chabal and Dalos, for example. The starting point is that improved police performance would be reflected by a reduction in the crime rate, by equilibrium between recorded crimes and crime clearance rates, and by public willingness to collaborate with the police. I also consider core governance values such as efficient effectiveness, transparency, accountability, and control of corruption. In terms of theoretical contributions, many studies such as those conducted under the United Nations International Crime Victim Survey framework, for example, the ones by Delfrat in the Southern Africa, overvalue public perceptions of crime, which is just one dimension of police performance. In the particular case of Mozambique, studies conducted, for example, by Shashiwa, Ana Leão, and Becker focus on the security sector as a whole, with more emphasis on the army and the intelligence service, while giving less attention to the police force. Therefore, my research is unique because it makes a practical contribution and goes beyond performance measurement and endeavors to understand whether and how the police manage performance by considering the PRM structure and the vital database systems necessary for internal and external performance measurement and monitoring. For methodology, I adopted qualitative methods for data collection. For primary data, I use structured, semi-structured, and informal interviews with key informants within and outside the police. The approach included a series of group discussions with people from different backgrounds, from judges and lawyers to journalists and school teachers. The fieldwork included spending time in police stations and working with local communities. For secondary data, documents from regulations, general command standing orders, general prosecutors and police annual reports, as well as unpublished reports on police and criminal justice in Mozambique were analyzed. Having provided the objectives and methodology, I will now summarize the findings of my study. Despite the strengths of rational choice policymaking that underpins the use of strategic management approaches, a strategy to which many governments claim to be committed, the findings of this research indicate that Mozambique is governed through as well as in context of a mixed or hybrid system of formal and informal relations and institutions. On the one hand, formal and established institutions with norms, regulations, and experience do exist. The capacity to ensure public security is there. It is most visible during special events such as Christmas and during electoral periods when a zero-tolerance policy is applied to ensure safety and tranquility. However, informal practices are part of the organizational culture of police in Maputo. The informality consists of non-enforcement of formal procedures and even encouragement of violations of norms. The most visible evidence of informality is in political interference and systematic corruption. Among other factors, evidence of corruption identified in this study includes the possibility of paying bribes to persuade investigation officers to conduct a search for stolen goods. Furthermore, we also have situations where prostitutes and police officers have informally established some Maputo street corners as soliciting sites in exchange for a daily tax, which is bribe to the police. Another important finding is in terms of devolutionist performance classification, for example, by Polit and Bukayer, indicating that the nature of the PRM management can be described as the traditional incipient level that is not yet performance management. The PRM does not have consolidated performance management in terms of indicators discussed and agreed between managers, street-level officers, clients, the public, and external oversight bodies and entities such as the prosecutors and civil society. Furthermore, the PRM is supposed to evaluate performance on units and commands by checking the implementation of a periodic work plan. The work plan uses problematic indicators such as reducing the incidence of crime and increasing levels of crime clearance. As argued in Chapter 2, reducing crime rates may depend on unpredictable effects rather than merely on police efficiency. Yet, another important finding concerns a human resource paradox, with police officers existing on paper in numbers but not being available on the ground. This discrepancy not only indicates inefficient human resource management, but it is also a form of corruption. On paper, Maputo has a reasonable number of officers with one of the highest police population ratios in the country. However, the officers do not exist in the Maputo police force in reality. In practice, many officers on the Maputo command payroll work somewhere else. This is described in Chapter 7, which discusses the case of about 200 officers completely outside the command structure. As this is a policy-oriented study, my research findings present some reflections on the scope for and ways toward improving police performance in Mozambique. First, I found both strengths and weakness in the Maputo police performance management. There is a need to encourage maximization of the already identified strengths in the police force. For example, the consolidated system of recruitment and training. Since 2001, this system has included university-level training in police sciences at the Academy of Police Sciences in Maputo. Other strengths to consider are the use of the PRM's long experience in fighting crime in highly challenging contexts such as war, the experience of working with communities, the socialist era experience of rewarding good practice, a consolidated chain of command, and special forces. Second, there is a general tendency in the country to demonize all things that belong to the past. It should not be forgotten that Maputo was preferred by people from many parts of the country as a new resettlement during the war because of its safety. Even with overpopulation and difficult livelihood conditions, it was possible to control crime. Many officers and police managers who were part of the police then are still on duty, which makes it easy to use their experience. At least in numbers, there are enough officers to ensure public safety in Maputo. These are strengths that should be used to the maximum. Third, the findings show that police officers have lost their self-esteem because of the way politicians, journalists, and even managers at the Ministry of the Interior deal with them. This situation needs to change. Politicians, and particularly managers at the Ministry of the Interior, should refrain from using pejorative expressions such as cinzentinho, the blue, when referring to police officers. It is necessary to turn policing into a respected profession. This entails improving working conditions and fair and on-time promotions that ensure better pay. It is important to ensure approval of necessary regulations that are delaying the implementation of the legal framework setting out a series of incentives. Finally, and to conclude, it seems that all past experience since the socialist era are of crucial importance in dealing with present and future problems. Seen this way, there is scope for enhancing police performance in Mozambique and for some achievements. However, it requires the combined efforts and the cooperation of local stakeholders, civil society, and the media to maintain pressure on the police and its leadership to open up to accountability and to reduce informality. If this is accepted, meaningful police reforms could be possible, helping to make Mozambique an even safer country. Thank you, Mr. Rector Magnifico.